Rome holds the largest number of obelisks in the world, 13 stone giants, yet almost none of them are Roman. They come from Egypt, carved 3,500 years ago under the pharaohs, arranged in their homeland according to a geometry and principles that still elude us, some even connected across the world, transported on the Nile, offered to emperors forgotten for centuries, then brought back to life by the Pope of the Renaissance. In Rome, these monoliths were repositioned according to a different order, that of the urban axes and sightlines created by the popes. Each obelisk becomes a point in an invisible network, guiding the eyes, structuring the city, sometimes even aligned with symbolic or astronomical directions. But beyond their arrangement, these stones fascinate with their physical properties. Their granite contains quartz, the stone of the gods for Egyptians. Under pressure, it generates weak electrical charges. Their tips, often covered in electrum, bear a name that strangely evokes electricity. Some see them as energy antennas, others as astronomical instruments, and some draw parallels with Nikola Tesla's towers for wireless transmission. Of course, archaeologists and historians have no evidence of the Egyptians designed the obelisk for this purpose. But their properties, their shape, their orientation, and their placement within the city remain fascinating mysteries. So, simply religious symbols, astronomical instruments, or antennas inherited from an ancient knowledge that we have since lost? I'm Mani, and today on A Stranger in Roma, let's follow in the footsteps of the eternal obelisks. Let us begin with the most impressive, the Lateran obelisk. 32 meters tall, about 230 tons, it is the tallest ancient obelisk still standing in the world. It was carved in the 15th centuries before Christ during the reign of Thutmose III for the temple of Amun at Karnak. Here the dating is solid, the hieroglyphs carved into the stone clearly mention the pharaoh. Like most of the great obelisks, it is made of the red Aswan granite. In the 4th century after Christ, Emperor Constantius II had it transported to Rome to adorn the Circus Maximus. The operation was spectacular. A journey down the Nile, a crossing of the Mediterranean on a specially designed ship, then a voyage up the Tiber. The Romans had developed true ships capable of moving these gigantic blocks. In the Middle Ages, the obelisk fell and broke into several pieces. It lay on the ground for centuries. In the 1587, the Pope Sixtus V ordered its restoration. The architect Domenico Fontana then devised an internal anchoring system to reassemble the fragments, a remarkable technical feat for the time. Now look at the stone. Aswan granite is composed of feldspar, which gives it its pinkish hue, mica with its shimmering reflections, and above all, quartz, which can account for up to 20 to 30% of the rock. Quartz has a well-known property, the piezoelectric effect, demonstrated by Pierre Curie and Jacques Curie in 1880. When subjected to pressure, it can generate very weak electrical charges. It is a principle still used today in many everyday objects. but in massive block of granite, the crystals are randomly oriented. The effect produced are minuscule and largely cancel each other out. This is therefore no evidence that the obelisk could function as an energy device. In ancient Egypt, certain translucent stones, like quartz, were associated with light and thus with the divine. The Egyptians were very attentive to the qualities of materials, their hardness, their brilliance, their capacity to capture light. The choice of Aswan granite was therefore no incidental. It is an exceptional stone, at once resistant, durable, and luminous. So, no, the obelisk is not a machine, but it raises a more subtle question. How far did the ancients understand matter? Not with our instruments, but with their own way of looking at the world. Let's head to the Vatican. The obelisk in St. Peter's Square is unique. It is the only one in Rome never to have been toppled since the antiquity. It has stood here unmoved for nearly 2,000 years. But looking more closely, surprise, not a single hieroglyph. So how can we claim it dates from around 2000 before Christ? The answer comes from the ancient text. Pliny the Elder writes, the third obelisk is in Rome in the Vatican Circus. It was carved under Nencoreus, son of Sesostris. The Vatican itself notes that this Nencoreus may correspond to Amenemhat II. But you heard the keyword may. This is a hypothetical identification, not a certainty. So why is this dating generally accepted? First, the style, Aswan granite, proportions, carving techniques, everything matches the obelisk from the Middle Kingdom. Second, Heliopolis was the great center for the solar cult, where Pharaoh of the 12th dynasty erected this type of monument. Finally, comparable obelisks such as those of Senusest I still exist today. What is certain, however, is that Emperor Caligula had it transported to Rome in 37 after Christ to adorn his circus on the very site of the current basilica. And since then, it has never moved. According to tradition, it even witnessed the martyrdom of St. Peter's, but shadows remain. First, this total absence of inscription, extremely rare for an Egyptian obelisk. Second, the reliance on a single source, Pliny. Yet its accounts through valuable, sometimes mixed direct observation with second-hand information. So, what to take away? The obelisk is very likely Egyptian. Its granite comes from Aswan. It was probably carved in the early 2nd millennium before Christ, but this dating rests on the collation of clues, not on direct proof. It is not a scientific certainty. In this strict sense, it's an historical reconstruction, coherent, solid, but revisable. The difference is essential. What we consider true today is the most probable hypothesis, but the stone itself keeps its secret. Now let's talk about the summit. This tip is Pyramidion. In ancient Egypt, it was often covered with electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. Electrum, the word may be surprising. In ancient Greek, electron referred both to amber and this golden metal. Why? Because amber, when rubbed, attracts dust and feather. It is one of the first observations of static electricity. Electrum itself does not produce electricity, but it shares this name root because of its luminous color, similar to that of amber and the sun. The pyramidion covered with this metal captured and reflected light. It symbolically marked the point of contact between heaven and earth. Today we know that light is an electromagnetic wave, that certain minerals like quartz can produce weak charges under pressure. The metals conduct electricity. But in the case of obelisks, nothing allows us to assert an energetic function. These connections are modern analogies, not historical evidence. One final detail, however, fascinates: the precision. The obelisk is remarkably vertical. Without modern instruments, Renaissance engineers managed to re-erect it with impressive accuracy using plumb lines, water levels, and empirical calculations. A skill they partly inherited from the Romans, who themselves inherited Egyptian techniques. So, continuous transformation or rediscovery? The question remains open. Let's enter Rome through the northern gate, the Porta del Popolo. The obelisk of Piazza del Popolo has welcomed travelers since the Renaissance, but its story begins much earlier. Carved under Seti I and Ramses II in the 13th century before Christ. For Heliopolis, it still bears the hieroglyphs dedicated to the sun god Ra. These inscriptions are not decorative, they follow a precise structure repeated on many Egyptian monuments. The royal titles, the pharaoh's names inscribed within cartouches, and above all, ritual formulas tied to the solar cult. The pharaoh is represented as beloved of Ra, lord of the two lands, guarantor of cosmic order, Maat. What is fascinating is that these formulas are not unique to Seti I or Ramses II. They draw on much older texts, some dating back to the pyramid texts of the Whole Kingdom, over 1,000 years before they were carved on this obelisk. In other words, these hieroglyphs are a part of a tradition that was already ancient at the time of their inscription. They do not merely recount a reign, they place the ruler within a continuity that is nearly timeless. Augustus has it transported to Rome around 10 before Christ to adorn the Circus Maximus. Then it disappeared, broken and buried, until its rediscovery in the Renaissance. In the 1587, Pope Sixtus V ordered its re-erection at the strategic location, marking the monumental entrance for pilgrims into the city, under the direction of Domenico Fontana. In the 19th century, the architect Giuseppe Valadier redesigned the square, adding fountains and sculptures. The marble lions surround the obelisk, while the ascent towards the Pincio is integrated into a neoclassical mise-en-scène with Egyptianizing accents, subtly evoking ancient Egypt at the heart of Rome. But beyond its visible history, the obelisk raises a deeper question. Inscriptions are often used to date a monument, yet they sometimes date a reign, not necessarily the creation itself. Throughout history, many rulers carved their names onto older works, appropriating them to cement their power. So a question remains: when a name is carved in stone, is it the signature of a creator or that of an heir? We will now speak of two obelisks together. They are linked, united by a shared history, that of the mausoleum of Augustus. Both once stood in a monumental entrance of the tomb of the first emperor on the Campus Martius. Carved from the red granite from Aswan, they stand about 14 meters tall and resemble each other like twins. With one striking peculiarity, like the one at St. Peter's, they bear no hieroglyphs. Not a single inscription, no name, nothing. So, are they Egyptians or Roman? Today, the most widely accepted hypothesis is that they were created during the time of Domitian, at the end of the 1st century AD. From granite imported from Egypt. One clue often cited, Strabo, who described the mausoleum shortly after its construction, does not mention these obelisks. But the absence of inscriptions still leaves room for uncertainty. What is certain, however, is their function: to mark the entrance to an imperial tomb. The obelisk, a solar symbol, thus connected the memory of Augustus to the eternity of the cosmic cycle. Then they fell, they disappeared, and their destinies diverged. The obelisk in Piazza di Santa Maria Maggiore was rediscovered during the Renaissance in fragments. A tradition holds that it was used during the sack of Rome in 1527, with no archaeological evidence, but the image persists. In 1587, Pope Sixtus V had it re-erected behind the basilica under the direction of Domenico Fontana. As was common at this time, some missing parts were restored using ancient materials. The obelisk we see today is therefore in part a recomposition. The Aswan granite that composes it is rich in quartz, a fascinating material now used for its very particular physical properties. But here, no measurement allows us to assert an active role. The stone remains silent and keeps its secrets. The obelisk in Piazza del Quirinal had a more discreet fate. Discovered in fragments in the 16th century, it lay on the ground for a long time before finally being re-erected in 1786 under Pius VI. Today it stands between the Dioscuri in a monumental composition that engages with the entire square. Two twins, a common origin, yet still partly obscure, and yet two different trajectories through centuries. Today they face each other from a distance across Rome. Their surface is mute, but their presence continues to raise a question. What if what we see is merely on stage in a much longer story? If you'd like to go further, you can find us on astrangerInRoma.com. On the website, you will find practical information to help you navigate the city with ease, and very soon a blog, a space for stories, details, and a slower way of discovering Rome. We also offer a selection of curated services designed to help you experience the city differently. Rome in Motion, our signature walking experience, a walk through the city, intuitive and fluid, where Rome reveals itself as you move. Curated shopping experiences, from quiet luxury to iconic addresses, never rushed, never generic. A personal style support to help you navigate Rome with confidence, whether for a special moment, an event, or simply to feel at ease in the city. Everything is designed to fit your rhythm, your interests, and your time in Rome. All the details are waiting for you on the website, and until then, enjoy the city and walk it your way. In front of Palazzo Montecitorio stands an obelisk that once measured time. Carved under Psamtik II in the 6th century before Christ at Heliopolis, it bears hieroglyphs that allow for a reliable dating. They celebrate the pharaoh as the beloved of Ra, guarantor of cosmic order, lord of the two lands. More than a name, they place the ruler within a cosmic system connected to the sun and the stars. Augustus has it transported to Rome in 10 before Christ to serve as the gnomon of the Horologium Augusti. The word gnomon comes from the Greek gnomon, the one who knows, the one who judges. In astronomy, it is a pointer of a sundial. The shadow it casts reveals the position of the sun, the length of the day, the passing of the seasons, as if the stone itself knew time. At its summit was likely a metal sphere, casting its shadow onto a vast dial. Today, the visible globe is a reconstruction inspired by the original Antike. Around the obelisk, the ground bears lines and zodiac signs, testifying to ancient astronomy and astrology. These markers reflect a scientific and symbolic knowledge used to measure time and observe the sky. This is not a modern invention, it is an ancient heritage. On the base, a Latin inscription recalls the Roman appropriation. Augustus consecrated this obelisk to the sun after having brought Egypt under the power of the Roman people. Here, 3 writings are layered, one on the stone, the hieroglyphs of the pharaoh, on the base the power of Rome in Latin, on the ground the sign of the heavens, the legacy of knowledge. 3 eras, one obsession, understanding the movement of the world, because here time is not merely read, it is projected. In its original form, Augustus' sundial was immense. The shadow from the tip stretched over dozens of meters, transforming the space into an astronomical instrument. Observing the shadow at the solstice made it possible to calculate latitude, the sun inclination, and even to approximate the circumference of the Earth, as Eratosthenes had done centuries earlier. In the Middle Ages, the obelisk fell and disappeared into the sediments. Rediscovered during the Renaissance, it lay on the ground before being re-erected in 1792 under Pius VI, but without being restored to its exact original location. Today, the remains of the sundial and the traces on the ground remind us of the grandeur of this ancient project and the way time and the sky were observed, understood, and symbolized. The granite, formed hundreds of millions of years ago, contains quartz and other minerals. No modern scientific measurement has detected any particular phenomenon on site, but the stone has endured through the centuries, silently recording the passage of time and the history of the people who handle it. Now look at the tops of the obelisks. Almost all bear a cross, a star, or another Christian emblem. It was Sixtus V in the 16th century who decided to baptize the pagan obelisks in this way. On each pyramidion, a bronze or iron cross was erected, often covered in precious metal. But ask yourself this: tribute or domination? This cross, placed atop the ancient pyramidion, resembles a headpiece, an added element. The church, unable to destroy this giant, covers them with the symbol that domesticates them. The petrified sun ray of God Ra becomes a support for the cross of Christ. It is a symbolic reappropriation, much like when churches were built atop pagan temples. One does not destroy the power of the place, but covers it. It converts it. The smallest, the most charming, the most unusual from the obelisk is in front of the church of Santa Maria sopra Minerva. A marble elephant proudly carries an obelisk on its back. It is Egyptian, likely carved under the pharaoh Apries in the 6th century before Christ for the temple of Sais. Small, only 5.5 meters tall. Its hieroglyphs celebrate the sun god Ra-Horakhti, the rising sun. The dating is solid, even if the exact attribution to Apries remains probable but not certain. Brought to Rome to adorn the temple of Isis on the Campus Martius, it was rediscovered in the 17th century near the church. In 1667, Pope Alexander VII commissioned Gian Lorenzo Bernini to create this original pedestal. The elephant, a symbol of strength and wisdom, carries the obelisk. The Latin inscription on the west side states it clearly. The figures of Egyptian wisdom carved on the obelisk, borne by the elephant, the strongest of animals. You who see them here understand that this is proof that a robust spirit supports solid wisdom. On the east side, another inscription to Alexander VII, Great Pontiff, as a sign of victorious piety in the year of salvation 1667. At first glance, the program seems clear. Ancient wisdom, born by strength and intelligence, rises toward Christian revelation. The church is right behind, the Pope's piety is celebrated. But looking more closely, the main inscription never mentions Christianity. It speaks of Egyptian wisdom, of a robust spirit, of strength. Nothing about God, nothing about Christ, nothing about revelation. We add that reading because the church is there, because the Pope commissioned the war. The monument itself says only this: a strong spirit carries wisdom. The rest is our interpretation. And then there is the unsettling detail: the elephant's gaze. It does not look at the church. Its gaze is turned toward the city, toward elsewhere. And if it carries its burden of ancient knowledge without looking back at what is meant to surpass it, at first sign that not everything is so simple. Let us now observe the stone itself. This Aswan granite contains larger feldspar crystals, which give it its characteristic speckled appearance. Feldspar, like quartz, is a piezoelectric mineral. Under pressure, it can produce very weak microelectrical charges. Under ultraviolet light, it may exhibit faint fluorescence. Scientifically, this is imperceptible to the naked eyes. Some modern esotericists have seen this as proof that a sun could be activated by lunar or solar light. Add to this inclusions of magnetite, a magnetic iron metal naturally present in granite, and you have a stone that scientifically reacts to pressure, light and the Earth's magnetic field, even if no magical or extraordinary effect has been measured on the monument. And then there is the unsettling detail, the drapery. Look closely at this veil covering the elephant's back, this skillfully crafted caparison. The official version says it hides a technical support. The Dominicans feared the elephant would collapse under the weight. Symbolically, we are told that this veil represents the mystery that ancient wisdom must lift in order to rise toward Christian revelation. But what if we looked at it differently? What if the veil were Christianity itself? Placed upon this robust spirit that is the elephant, intersposing itself between him and ancient knowledge, covering it, hiding it, smothering it. The Egyptian obelisk, with its hieroglyphs that no one could read anymore, with its stone containing quartz, feldspar and magnetite, with its geological memory dating back 600 million years, stands just above. But the elephant cannot truly reach it. A veil separates them. Its gaze does not turn toward the church, it looks elsewhere, toward the city, toward elsewhere that may never come. He carries the weight of knowledge. Surely he is aware of it. Surely this knowledge is already his, for his spirit is robust and intelligent. The elephant knows he already possesses knowledge within himself, but he accepts or pretends to accept that the veil interposes itself. This is even more subversive. He is not a helpless prisoner, but a willing guardian, or a wise being who plays the game to protect what he carries. And the inscription at the end contradicts none of this. It speaks only of strength and wisdom. It leaves room for this mystery. So the veil of ignorance, on which side does it truly lie? At the top of the Spanish steps, a modern obelisk rises elegant, like a line connecting the sky to the city. It is not Egyptian, commissioned by Pius IX in the 19th century to commemorate the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. It is carved from pink granite from Baveno in northern Italy. Its carving required several years of work. This extremely hard granite forced the Italian quarry workers to reinvent techniques almost lost since antiquity. The Pope wanted it to be perfectly aligned with the obelisk at the Popolo, visible in the distance. The two monuments responded to each other across the city like silent beacons. At the top, the stele bears a Latin inscription meaning the Holy Immaculate Conception is exalted under the sign of light and piety. Here, no coded message, the symbol is clear and direct. The granite of Baveno contains about 15% quartz compared to the 25 to 30% of that of Aswan. For a physicist, it is a more neutral material. For an esoterist, it's less living stone. The difference reminds us why the Egyptians took their granite from Aswan, the richest in quartz, the hardest, the most brilliant, capable of responding to light and pressure. Coincidence or knowledge? Today at Tinita del Monte, the message is different. Aligned with its ancestors at the Popolo, the modern obelisk continues to mark the city, but its meaning has changed. The stone is natural, the reading is direct, piety and light, nothing more. We end our journey in a district of Rome that many overlook, the Euro. Built in the 1930 for a World's Fair planned in the 1942 but cancelled due to the Second World War. This district was meant to embody the power and modernity of fascist Italy. And at the heart of this monumental project stands an obelisk like no other, the Obelisco di Marconi. Over 45 meters tall, it is one of the most imposing modern obelisks in Rome. But unlike all the others we have seen, it is not made of Aswan granite. It is made of Carrara marble, white, luminous, almost unreal. Its name gives us the key, Guglielmo Marconi. Here, unlike with ancient obelisks, there are no hieroglyphs. But the stone is not silent. Bas-reliefs run across its surface. Figures in motion, stylized bodies, almost choreographed. A celebration of the body, of rhythm, of human energy, in the monumental language of its time. This is no longer a sacred narrative, it is a staging, meaning no longer lies solely in the stone, it lies in what it evokes. Because Guglielmo Marconi did not discover waves. They already existed, invisible all around us, described by James Clerk Maxwell, demonstrated by Heinrich Hertz. But he was the first to master them. To transmit information over distance thanks to the wireless telegraphy, using a portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, radio waves. To understand that air itself could become a conduit, to transform these waves into language, into signal, into transmission. And so a radio, as we know it today, was born. In 1901, a simple signal crossed the Atlantic wirelessly. What had seemed impossible became proven. For the first time, an invisible wave carried information over a distance. And yet, what we use today, radio, Wi-Fi, communications technologically exploits only a limited part of the electromagnetic spectrum. A fraction of a vast physical domain, one that science is still exploring and understanding. So here, in the Euro, the obelisk transmits nothing, it receives nothing, but it embodies a shift, where the ancients cast into stone an idea of connection between heaven and earth. Marconi made that connection measurable, reproducible, real. 3,000 years separate these gestures. The form, however, has not changed. A point towards the sky, a base anchored in the ground, and between the two something flows. In the Euro, this is no longer a mystery, it is a scientific reality, but perhaps also a reminder. What we call a discovery today is something merely a belated understanding of a very real physical phenomena, long invisible, whose potential we have only beginning to explore. As Nikola Tesla suggested, the day science dares to fully explore what it does not yet understand, it will make staggering progress. Because what surrounds us is not empty, it's a field, invisible, measurable, but still largely unexplored. And perhaps these stones raised toward the skies for millennia are not merely symbols, but the silent traces of an intuition that we are only beginning to rediscover. The network of Sixtus V. Sixtus V in the 16th century did not merely re-erect obelisks, he transformed them into landmarks of a true urban system. Look, St. Peter's Basilica, the Arcabasilica of St. John's Lateran, the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, Piazza del Popolo. Connect them on a map. The axes of the new straight street guide pilgrims from one basilica to another, and at the end of each vista an obelisk, a monumental orientation system legible to the naked eyes, a staging of power and the sacred on a wide city scale. Before going further, let us pause for a moment. You may have noticed some obelisks, like those of the Lateran or the Popolo, can be dated relatively reliably thanks to their inscriptions. Others, like the one at St. Peter's, rely on ancient sources and stylistic analysis. So, are these dates, like 1500 or 2000 years before our era, truly scientific? The answer is more nuanced. Scientific methods include stratigraphy and the dating of associated organic materials when they exist, but much of the work remains interpretative, comparing hieroglyphic styles, reconstructing reigns from partial records, and there is a key limitation. A granite obelisk itself cannot be directly dated. The stone is hundreds of millions of years old. What we usually date is the inscription, which leads us to a simple question. When a ruler carves its name on a monument, is he creating it or claiming something older? We know that Ramses II reinscribed his name on earlier monuments. So, in some cases, the date we read may reflect an appropriation, not the original creation. An hypothesis, not a proof, but a legitimate question. In the 1920s, Alfred Watkins proposed that ancient sites aligned along straight lines, originally simple pathways linking visible height points. Over time, the idea evolved into that of a global network. But science does not support the existence of such an energy grid. What it does confirm is this: the Earth itself is not inert. It generates a magnetic field, natural electrical currents, and constant electromagnetic interactions. And across civilizations, monuments are deliberately aligned with the sun, the stars, and the landscape. From Teotihuacan to Machu Picchu, the same principles appear: align, orient, elevate. Not a proven network, but a shared way of structuring space within a world already shaped by invisible forces. And then comes Rome, because here these ancient markers, the obelisks, are not only preserved, they are repositioned, realigned, inserted into a new system, not cosmic this time, but urban. Some alternative theories go further. They propose that pyramids and obelisks could form a system interacting with natural forces. The pyramid, through its geometry, mass and materials, may concentrate certain physical phenomena: telluric currents, solar radiation, or electromagnetic effects. The King's Chamber of Khufu is sometimes described in these models as a focal point where such effects could accumulate or stabilize. Studies such as Scan Pyramid in 2017 have revealed unknown internal structures and unexpected behaviors in the way waves interact with the monument. Within this framework, the obelisk is often described as a relay, a vertical structure anchored in the ground, sometimes topped with metal, potentially capable of interacting with its environment in a different way, not as a source but as a marker or transmitter. In physics, we know that the world is structured by fields and frequencies, and that our perception captures only a limited portion of them. From this perspective, some interpretations suggest that these monuments may have been designed not only as symbols, but as interfaces, ways of engaging with forces that are real but not directly perceptible. They imagine that different states of reality could coexist within the same space, separated not by distance, but by frequency. From this perspective, matter itself can be understood as a form of organized energy. At certain vibrational regimes or certain frequencies, physical systems organize into stable configurations. Within these configurations, what we perceive as solid matter emerges as a structured and stable form of energy specific to its vibrational conditions. What we perceive as solid reality is only one configuration among many, one range of interactions to which our senses and our own frequency are adapted. Some interpretations suggest that structures such as the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Barabar caves, built with extraordinary precision, could have been designed to interact with these vibrational conditions and, most of all, with our own frequency, increasing it to allow access to other worlds directly. This remains today an hypothesis, not a scientific model, but it raises a fundamental question: if reality depends even partially on how we interact with it, how much of it do we truly perceive, and how much remains beyond our reach? Obelisks are often compared to Tesla's towers. Why? Because at the beginning of the 20th century, Nikola Tesla envisioned a system to transmit energy wirelessly over long distances. The Wardenclyffe Tower, built on a long island between 1901 and 1917, stood 57 meters tall and was topped with a metal dome. Its principle relied on three key ideas. The Earth as a conductor, inject a high-frequency current at one point to recover it elsewhere. Resonance, the tower was meant to enter harmonic vibration with the Earth, like a tuning fork vibrating at a distance. Tesla calculated specific frequencies to tune the planet. The antenna, the dome captured or emitted atmospheric energy using the ionosphere to reflect signals. Why compare this to obelisks? The similarities are striking. Vertical structure, base anchored in the ground, pointed or metallized top, and the presumed function of energy transmission. The difference: Tesla used artificial electricity and precise calculations, whereas obelisks, if they had an energetic function, would harness natural forces, solar radiation, telluric currents, diamagnetic points, quartz piezoelectric pressure. The parallel extends to the pyramid. Recent studies, like Scan Pyramid in 2017, show that certain chambers concentrated electromagnetic waves and vibrate at specific frequencies. reminiscent of Tesla's harmonic resonance concept. Even if no energetic function is scientifically confirmed, the principle is similar. Structure and form can facilitate the circulation or concentration of energy. Tesla Tower never fully functioned and was dismantled, but the idea persists. Observing an obelisk or a pyramid, one may wonder what if 5,000 years ago someone had the same intuition. Unless these monuments are the legacy of a far older civilization, post-Zep Tepi, built at the time when the Earth's North Pole was in the constellation of Hercules during the age of the Leo, like Whispering the Sphinx. One that had already mastered some form of clean renewable energy, whose instruction manual we have lost. And so our journey through the obelisks of Rome comes to an end. These stone giants, raised by the pharaohs and rediscovered by the popes, have not merely marked the city with their presence. They tell an ancient story where form, matter, light and vibration already seemed to be in a dialogue with the forces we are only beginning to glimpse. We have explored the theories, pyramids as generators, obelisks as transmitters, alignments that trace networks across the globe, harmonic resonance, and even the parallels with the Tesla's experiments. All of this suggests that energy, movement, and matter are not separate, but intertwined within the same space, layered and governed by frequencies we do not yet perceive. Science can measure, calculate, test. It can confirm or refute certain hypotheses. But there remain domains where common sense whispers to us. Certain properties of vibration, of energy fields, of the interactions between matter on different levels remain invisible, elusive, beyond the reach of our instruments. Perhaps these obelisks, these pyramids, these millennial monuments were designed to engage with these invisible planes. Perhaps they show us a logic we have forgotten, that material space is not singular, but layered, and that vibration is the key that separates and connects these planes. What if at the heart of this city, amidst stone, shadow and light, Rome were to reach us a lesson about time, matter, energy, and about our curiosity, the only force capable of drawing us closer to what our eyes and instruments do not yet see. Thanks for seeing Rome's obelisks through a different lens with me. For more immersive journeys through the Eternal City, don't forget to subscribe. See you soon for the next video. Arrivederci. Ciao ciao!